Hey guys, Chris from Black Flag Barbell Club. Today we're going to talk about cues and understanding them. In particular, today we're going to talk about knees out and what that means. So knees out is probably one of the most common cues for the squat. And you've probably heard it yelled at a number of lifters. It's probably been yelled at you, or you've probably been told, it's important to keep your knees out in the squat, blah, blah, blah. And that is true. It is important to keep your knees out in the squat, but you have to understand what that cue entails in terms of why are we telling you to keep your knees out and how do we want you to achieve it. Yeah, those two things are very important when considering if I tell someone knees out, particularly just before a set or something like make sure you keep your knees out this set, I want a particular reaction from them when I say knees out. Yeah, and it's not do this. That's not what I want. Yeah? So, why do we tell people knees out? What's the underlying basis for the cue itself? So, when we are trying to squat weight, you're trying to lift something heavy, you're trying to put yourself in the best position to execute that lift. Yeah? So you want to be efficient and you want to move the most weight possible. Yeah? So that technique that lets you lift as much as you can. Yeah, so if using this technique you can lift 100 and this technique you can use 150. This is the better one, in the sport of powerlifting at least. So, what do we want to do to make ourselves as efficient as possible in the squat? Yeah, or any lift really, but in this case knees out, squat. We want to be very tight. We want to have a lot of tension through, and again knees out, I'm just talking waist down. We want to have a lot of tension through the hip, through the knee, through the ankle. You want to fix a position that is going to stay where you put it. You don't want that position to change mid-lift, because if you've put yourself in the position that you know is going to allow you to lift the most weight and that position changes, then that's a bad thing. Yeah, because you've now compromised the position, you're in a weaker one, and yet you're still under the bar, shit's going to get real. So, when I say knees out to someone, what I want to achieve with that cue is them understanding that I need them to root to the floor and to create tension from the hip down to their feet, which are the anchors, attaching them to the ground. Okay? That's a very important thing. So if I say knees out, I don't want them to just do this. I want them to tap into conversations we've had in the past, technique we've practiced in the past, that says when he says knees out, it means that I've got to really screw into the floor. I've got to have all this tension going through my hip, my knee, my ankle to keep it where I put it in that certain alignment. Doesn't mean that I've got to push out this way. Yeah? So that's number one, understanding why we're doing the thing in the first place. Number two, understanding how to do it. And that's going to be easier to show you in standing versus sitting here. So we're going to move the camera. I'm going to show you what I mean. Alright, so we understand why we're doing it, yeah? Now we want to show how, okay? So this is, I'm talking to the same lifter, it's like, look, we need you to keep your knees out. We're going to have this conversation about why, so they're going to develop their understanding of why we're asking them to do this at all, and then we're going to teach them how to do it. So, knees out for me starts at the feet, yeah? So feet are your anchors to the ground. When you're squatting, your feet are your contact points. Unless something goes horribly wrong and you fold up like a pretzel, then the feet should be the only thing that touches the floor when you squat. Yeah? So they're going to be very important in deciding how the squat, goes. How it, if it's a successful lift, if it's a shitty lift but you get it, if it's a shitty lift and you don't get it, if you miss it, blah blah blah. So in terms of the feet, I use the idea of spreading the floor, which most people have heard, to demonstrate how I want them to anchor their feet to the floor. You may have heard the term rooting yourself to the floor or screwing your feet into the floor. These are all variations on the same thing. Yeah? So it doesn't matter if someone says spread the floor, rooting to the floor, screwing into the floor. Usually they're referring to just sort of anchoring your feet in a position that's going to allow you to efficiently squat the most weight. Yeah? Now, how I demonstrate this is, as I said, spreading the floor. So you can hopefully see that we've got all these rubber mats that are like a square. So usually I'll get people to put one foot on each mat, and there's a line in the middle, and I'm going to say, all right, I want you to spread those mats apart. Ooh, they're not going to move because it's Yeah, the gym floor's full of them. But the idea of spreading the floor apart is the first step in them understanding knees out. Yeah? So, once they've done that, and when you do it, the reason I get them to do it is because you'll feel your bum, your thigh, everything is going to get tight because you are trying to move something that will not move. Yeah? You're creating tension. You're anchoring your feet to the floor by trying to spread the floor apart. Now we're going to delve into this a little bit more so they understand, all right, this is why we're being taught knees out, why it's important to my squat. I've done step 1, showing them spread the floor apart. Now we're going to go into a bit more detail on that. So how do I want them to spread the floor apart? I don't want them, and hopefully you can see this, I don't want them to just push their knees out because that is going to affect your anchor point, your contact with the floor, your foot. If all I do is shove my knee out, then I'm going to lift my foot that little bit. If I do it in standing, if all I do is shove my knees out, then my foot moves, yeah? Which I don't want. Don't want my foot to come off the ground. Pardon me. So, how do we want them to do it? Yeah? I don't want them to just go knees out, so I've got to explain to them how do I want them to do it. So we're going to screw into the floor a little bit. So I will do this utilizing the big toe and the ball of the foot. So we're going to teach them to sort of screw. So I'm going to pick up my heel. I'm screwing the ball of my foot into the floor. I'm putting a lot of pressure this way, yeah, so down and out through the ball of my foot and my big toe. I'm using that pressure to kind of spread my toes out as I go, and then I'm dropping that heel in as well. Okay? While I maintain that foot's pressure, I'm going to do the same thing on the other foot, screwing the ball of the foot in, spreading the toes out, dropping that heel down. Okay? My feet are uneven and it's annoying me. Alright, once I've done that, they maintain that pressure. I can feel my bum, I can feel my thighs, I can feel my feet really firmly anchored to the floor on a flat foot where I have three main contact points: the ball of my foot, my pinky toe, and my heel. Yeah? That tells me I've got a flat, solid foot, a solid anchor from which to squat. Yeah? If I lose one of those anchor points, okay, so if I'm screwing in, put my foot down, and as I'm doing this one, I feel that ball of the foot come up, then I know that I've lost that position. I've got to reset it before I actually do the thing. Yeah? Similarly, I get them to think about this feeling of their feet being in full contact with the ground as they go down and up in the squat. If as you come down, you feel this happen, or you feel this happen, you know something has changed, you know you haven't held the position, rejig it when you get to the top, you know, reset it. Yeah? So, we've described why we want them to keep their knees out. We've explained how we want them to do it, starting very simply with spread the floor, then going into a bit more detail in terms of, right, this is how I want you to anchor your feet, this is the pressure I want you to maintain the whole time you squat down, the whole time you come up. Yeah? So they've got the why, they've got the how. Next up is practice. Yeah? Now, if you're relatively strong without having done this before, you're going to feel relatively weak when you try it. Yeah? You're using your muscles in a different way than they are used to. You're probably going to have to drop the weight fairly significantly until they get the idea, and then you can start creeping it back up. Yeah? That's fine. That's not a bad thing. Doesn't mean that the cue's shit. It means that you're bad at doing it. Yeah? You've got to invest a little time in practicing the cue, getting the skill down, and then you will see the dividends later. Yeah? Most people are okay with that. Some people are not. You have to have a frank conversation with them. And if after that conversation they choose to ignore you, so be it. You tried. Try again when they hurt themselves or whatever it may be when they get stuck. But if you explain why and then explain how, the lifter is armed with everything they need to know at that point. Yeah? And you may have to refine things like spread the floor may not work for someone. You may have to try screw your foot into the floor. You may have to get inventive. You can yell strawberries at them. As long as they understand what strawberries means as a cue, it doesn't matter what you yell. So the reason we say knees out is because it's simple, it's quick, it's to the point. I don't have to spend 10 minutes explaining it to the lifter every time. We've had this conversation a few times to let it sort of sink in and get in their head, get their understanding of the cue down. So then when I come to them later and I say, you need to keep your knees out better, make sure you're anchoring to the floor correctly, make sure you're focusing on that balanced foot, they know what I mean. Yeah, whether I just say knees out, whether I say anchor to the floor, whether I say, how's the balance on your foot as you come down and up, like what do you feel? They know what I'm talking about because we've laid that groundwork for the cue before. If you get a new lifter and all you do is yell knees out, then they're probably just going to do this. And yes, it's a better position than this one, but it's not, it's not where you want them to be. It's not the ultimate goal of refining their squat technique. Yeah, it's a band-aid solution at best. Okay. Now you might say, all right, I'm doing all this, and my knees still cave in a little bit. They don't quite get where I want them to go. Number one, if you've just started doing the cueing, I would not worry about it at all. I would make sure that you are still focusing on the setup and execution throughout the lift. Yeah, so it has to be an active learning process. You can't just set it at the top and forget it while you squat. You have to be thinking about this thing the whole time. You can't think of too many cues at once, so focus in on what's the most important thing in terms of improving your squat that session. Yeah, what are you working on that session? Is it knees out? Is it your brace? Is it making sure that you are in the center of the bar and you don't tip? Whatever the fuck it is, focus on the one thing, improve that thing. You can't focus on 5 things at a time. It doesn't work. Yeah, it's a bad idea. Don't do it. Focus on one thing at a time. But yeah, if you're new to learning the cue and the technique behind it, you're probably just not that good at it yet. Just keep practicing. Yeah. Some people will find that they have inactive glutes. How much you believe in inactive glutes is a point of contention, let's call it. I mean, if you've successfully done a squat and extended your hip, you've used your glutes, whether you like it or not. That said, if you're having trouble feeling them, then you can do some glute activation exercises to help you feel them better. So you could do glute clams, you could do pushing your knee into the wall while standing on one leg and using them for balance, that kind of thing. There's 1,001 glute activation exercises that you can add in and try. If you want to try them, feel free. If they make a noticeable difference to how you perform the lift in terms of getting into an efficient position and staying there, sure, keep them around. If they're just causing you to spend extra time warming up in the gym and there's not an appreciable difference between your squat pre-activation, your squat post-activation, I'd probably not do them. I would just practice the skill of squatting correctly. Yeah? But that is the groundwork behind knees out. So it's not as simple as just, all right, I've come down and I've squat in here, I need to get my knees out here. There's a lot more behind it than that, and it's important that you understand that and that your lifters understand that. Yeah? If they don't, you're probably wasting your time saying knees out when they're lifting. Okay? As I said, doesn't matter what cue you use for it. It could be knees out, could be strawberries, could be choc chip ice cream, whatever the fuck it is, as long as they understand what you mean, because you have laid the foundation earlier, you're good to go. Okay? So if you want to hide your trade secrets, put them behind a weird word, like yelling Parliament. Yeah? Everyone at the competition will be like, oh, what does Parliament mean? That's crazy. That's about it, I think. I think Angus has just arrived too, so we're going to start training. Any questions, feel free to let me know. If you've got a different way of getting through to people in terms of the knees out cue, if you've got a different way of thinking about knees out and what that means to you, feel free to comment, email us, we'll put the email at the end. Always love to talk training, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, motherfuckers better know.
Ooh, fish oil.